as we start to wrap things up a little bit, I wanted to see, what are you excited about in the field? You mentioned peptides. That's something a lot of people are looking at and exploring and utilizing more. But what are you actually excited, or what are you looking at in the field that you're seeing or you're hoping to apply in the coming years?
Well, about a year ago, I met a physician who was really an expert in biophysics, using light and energy to influence cell systems. So he didn't discover this, but what he found is that, so in this, there's a whole stem cell explosion going on. Like, people need stem cells because their old cells are worn out and they need healing, blah, blah, blah. And there's a lot of products on the market where it's given in the form of umbilical stem cells or placental stem cells or exosomes, and so I've gone and done all these courses. And then I ran across this guy. He's a physician in California who was looking at stem cells, and there are embryonic stem cells that have never been activated that circulate in all of our bodies. They're called v-cells, which stands for very small embryonic-like stem cells. So all of our cells, from the time of conception and then division, are on a time path where they're dividing. And the telomeres, the little tags at the end of the chromosome, are getting shorter and shorter. And there's a guy at UCLA, Haplik, who figured out that about 62, each cell line gets about 62 times to replicate itself, and then it doesn't do it anymore, and then you get old and then you die. But there are cells circulating around in our body, which are called these V-cells, and they never got turned on. They're there, but they haven't got turned on. And this guy figured out a laser that's got a holographic lens on it, which activates these stem cells. So we're doing this in the clinic now. And it's pretty crazy, the kind of results that you get with rejuvenation. So this,
are you using that with PRP as well?
Well, you take the blood, you essentially do PRP, but the filter's a little bit different,
right?
So that you get a lot of V cells.
Yep.
Then the V cells are activated by this laser,
right?
And you can do a very interesting thing where, okay, you've extracted the blood, you have a tube that's been through this centrifuge with a filter, and you've got the plasma. And you take this and you just tell the person, like, where do you feel it? Well, I feel it about here. Okay. Now laser the cells. Okay. Hand it back to the patient. Where do you feel it? You can't see me, but I feel it out here. Like, you actually can feel the pushback. These things are alive. This is life. This is like life, embryonic, turned on. Now, what he also figured out, I'm not sure he did all this by himself. I don't know that he figured all this out himself. Okay. But that if you took cells, random cells in a chamber in suspension, and you shined a laser on it for 30, 60, 90 minutes, this holographic laser, and you went back the next day and looked at the cells, they'd all be lined up in a nice little row. So that then you could activate these stem cells, and then you could laser areas of the body as they're going in where you want them to go. Because what they found is that when you activate these cells, it turns on these what are called adhesion factors. It'll make them stick. So it makes them stick, and you can send them to where you want them. Now, normal stem cells, mesenchymal stem cells, are big. They're like 9 to 12 microns big. The lung has a filter that's about 6 microns. So if you inject them IV, they're all going to the lung, and that's where they're staying. And if you got COPD or pulmonary fibrosis, they might really help you. But unless you inject it into the spinal fluid, it's not going into your brain. But these things are small. They're like 3 microns. They're smaller than red blood cells. And they will go through the lung, and they will go to other places. So I'm very excited about this because there's just endless uses of this with, people who have terrible ALS, or they have terrible things. And it can really, so this industry Tony Robbins just wrote this book on his experiences with stem cells, Life Force, I think it's called. It's very interesting because this field is exploding with bright minds looking at how can we make these bodies go 120 years, 180 years? How can we rejuvenate them? How can we make this thing happen? And right now we're in the, I think we're just in the blip of, man, this thing is just going like this. And I find that very exciting because I think these can be applied to cancer treatments, to fatigue. Like, how do you stimulate mitochondria so you grow a whole bunch of new ones that are actually working and good? And you can sort of outdo the toxicity that exists in the environment so we can stay ahead of it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I love that you brought that up. We talked about V-cells here a little while and actually published an article a little while back on it. And it is exciting because it's combining what you already have in your body, and it's combined photobiomodulation and this idea of providing the right energy, the right information that activates them to do what your body can do and self-heal. And it's not the addition of any kind of compound or chemical or new, anything. It's really your body just being basically empowered to do what it can do to itself. So I think it's wonderful. I think this whole idea of giving the body certain information through things like synchronized holographic light, hyperpolarized light, there's all different ways, even sounds or anything, that energy is just giving it the information to then organize it properly. Like you said, those cells line up. They're given information, instructions. They didn't have it. They were chaotic. You had no cell-to-cell communication. Everything was breaking down. That's a diseased body. But then you give it order and you'll see what can happen. Amazing self-healing. So I'm right there with you. I'm super excited about the future there.